Cars thrill me, and they have since I was a child. My dad was a quintessential car guy. He was just so cool to me. He loved German engineering. He had a BMW motorcycle. He was really passionate about German cars. And I have these vivid memories of the smell of petrol in our garage as my dad would painstakingly care for, frankly, a great love of his life, a Mercedes-Benz 450 SL, the one with the hardtop convertible. You remember? This was a lifelong love, and it's one that formed my own basis of understanding for what unconditional love means. It stemmed from watching him take care of the SL. Sure, it had problems, it would break or fail, and it would cause him a lot of frustration. But he loved the car just the same. I'd sneak into the garage and I'd watch him with every detail. He and this car had a bond. He had such respect and admiration for this piece of machinery. It was so much more than a car to him. The fascination of a car as a feat of human ingenuity and incredible engineering, well, it must have been genetic because it's imbued in me so deeply. Cars taught me how to understand the world. I may have learned the laws of physics in school, but I only truly understood them through my experiences behind the wheel. Acceleration, aerodynamics, G-force. These concepts came to life as I experienced them firsthand through driving. It also formed my foundation for a higher level of understanding of the laws of the universe. My dad was a doctor, but he was a musician and a painter too. Cars represented how art and science could come together. That resonated very deeply with him, and frankly, it's reverberated throughout my life and career as well. A spectrum of emotions were unleashed through the driving experience. Things like love, fear, anticipation, exhilaration, thrill. Cars made my heart pound, and they still do today. The SL was always filled with music. My dad would use our time in the car together to teach me about culture and history, always with the backdrop of music. He loved classical, but his favorite song was House of the Rising Sun. We'd listen to it as we drove through the back roads in Virginia in the autumn when the leaves would be changing into these gorgeous colors. He bought the car in 1977, and he lovingly cared for it for 30 years until he passed away. These drives are how I remember him now. I may be my father's daughter, but this is not my father's world. Things have changed, and they continue changing faster and faster. A new set of values have emerged since the romanticized era of cars that I fell in love with. The core tenets of the old ways are disappearing quickly. The car is not the point anymore. The door gaps and the fit and finish, all these things that used to be the differentiators between brands, they're no longer deal breakers. It's what the car can enable that's the point now. The digital experience, that's the mark of quality now. But the opposite's also true. The digital experience and the content make it the best car. So, said another way, if the software sucks, the car sucks. I'm sure that's really hard to hear, and it's really hard for me to say as a petrol head, but I've spent the past 15 years of my life building software, and I've witnessed firsthand what a difference user experience makes on an economic level. My generation grew up with the internet. It's in our DNA. Our lives have been lived online. We innately understand things about the digital world that we can't really explain to digital newcomers, including what we expect from software products. Because huge parts of our identities are accessed online. And so it's understandable that we expect a lot from our screens. Over the past few years, really driven by Tesla and EV upstarts like Byton, large displays have become the central focal point of the vehicle interior. Screens have really become synonymous and honestly symbolic of a futuristic product. They take center stage, and when they're there, everything else falls into the background. The stitching, the seats, they just don't matter as much in comparison to a screen. And that's where the friction lies. Automakers think that installing the screen is the point, that once it's there, the job is done. But that's just not true. The screen will get you to the starting line, but it's not the race. When I first moved to Munich 4 years ago and I encountered this resistance to this concept, I thought maybe we had a language barrier. So I studied for 18 months and I learned German so that I would be better compatible with my colleagues and my counterparts. That was not easy. I did the work, but I realized it wasn't the language that was the barrier. It was the mentality. I'm not even sure today if it's truly understood what's happening here and what the stakes are. The world I come from, the California tech world, we think differently about this whole thing. What the tech players understand that the automakers don't is that when the car is connected, that's when this industry actually begins. That tension that we all feel in the air, it's real. We're living at the inflection point for legacy automakers right now. I've lived through this already. When the iPhone first came out, we experienced the handset wars, and this really feels like history repeating itself. We often think that things are tough, we feel it, but that's because this is the end of the beginning. Electrification is an accelerant to all this, but that's just about propulsion. This is actually about a 100-year-old industry needing to evolve the entire way that they do business, even down to the day-to-day work. That's a nearly impossible undertaking. I hear a lot of talk about the shift to the software-defined car, but what does that actually mean? This is a battle between hardware and software thinking. What is that? At the core, it's in the name. It's fundamentally about hard versus soft, being rigid in your ways versus being flexible to new possibilities, maybe even ones you hadn't considered before. Car making, unfortunately, is not the future. Tesla and Apple and Google, they get that. They're positioned as tech companies because they understand that the car is the means to the end. The actual product in the future is not a car. It's time plus location. And I don't need to tell you that we're already reaching the point where the screen will be more economically valuable than the car itself. The screen, no matter what form that takes, it's a window. And what that window points to is the magic. It's about where it can take us. Screens are a portal to a different universe, and as consumers, we love to live in that digital universe. We keep calling cars smartphones on wheels, but that's putting it in too small of a box. Smartphones and cars have a very similar quality in that they're both reaching the theoretical limits of perfection. When I look at my phone, I pull it out, I think, this is an industrial design marvel. But the phone itself is cold, it's robotic, it's made of glass and chrome, and it's unfeeling. But when we turn it on, it comes to life. And we feel our hearts beat a little bit faster because we know that our lives are on these devices. It's about the emotion. The glass itself disappears. It becomes about the time that we spend. And we're looking through the glass and it disappears into the content. I've spent the past decade of my career in sensor fusion, a field specifically studying these types of phenomena. The particular field of expertise that I have is working with biofeedback to understand human response to stimuli, which we commonly know as emotional response. And scientists know for sure that emotions are created in the brain. It's why that ice-cold piece of glass in your hand transforms into something warm and personal. You're connected to it because of how it makes you feel. And that emotional connection is different for everyone. Cars can have that quality too if we try to build it. In fact, in a car, this relationship may become many times more potent than the relationship we have with our smartphones. That emotion of where it takes you transcends physical boundaries. For me personally, I think we're vastly underutilizing the opportunity of this platform. When you laugh or you cry while you're having an experience, you activate powerful chemicals in your brain like dopamine and serotonin. All that emotion that I felt in a car, love, fear, anticipation, exhilaration, thrill, no matter how these were generated or how they're achieved, the emotions are everlasting because they're fundamentally human. And they aren't going away based on the manner of propulsion. The mechanical and physical stimulus will transform into something visceral and emotional. You already have people at your companies who get this, and they want the industry to change and metamorphosize, flourish to even greater heights than what we know of the car industry, if you'll just let them. You also have people like me who are so passionate about cars, who are on your side and want to help you succeed. You'll have to accept that there are things about this that you don't fully understand yet. And even if you're uncomfortable, you'll still have to trust the path forward. The software-first companies are just waiting for their moment to strike because they see the opportunity exceptionally clearly. The stakes are so high. The people who see the path forward for the future of this industry and know how to get there, well, there'll be new faces. They'll look different, they'll act different, they'll speak a different language. They'll be different. And what's the problem with different? Well, it's hard and it will be a little bit scary. But we need to be brave right now. We have to be open to learning from new perspectives and listening. Because for me, I want to spend my time in a German car. That's where I'm the happiest. And I really want that we get out of this stronger than before.